Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the mmjhl podcast for episode 12. I'm your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. This episode was supposed to be streamed at the St. Vital Centennial Arena, but let me tell you something, folks. Might be TMI for some people, but runny nose isn't too fun, and didn't want to be dealing with that consistently. Kind of dealt with it throughout the game that we called here tonight on the network. I guess not here, since I'm not at the arena, but just got back from calling the St. Vital Junior Victorias and Raiders Junior Hockey Club matchup, which was an absolute thriller. But welcome to the show, everybody. MMJHL Podcast, episode 12, brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all of your industrial needs. As always gotta reset this afterwards. Forgot to do it, but yeah, be sure to check out their website as you see it moving on the screen right now. No, it's still at makecanfasteners.shop. And check out their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg today. Of course, as I said, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Deterraco as well. They're one of our other official sponsors. Serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years in the agricultural industry. Thank you to them for supporting junior hockey here on the network and G Show Productions. And thank you to these guys at Goaltenders for sponsoring this edition of the MMJHL podcast, your goalie's personal video review service. Be sure to check out what they're all about at GordyTumelsonGoalies.ca. But as for tonight in the MMJHL, as we take you to the scores since Friday, I'm going to go to the full site here at mmjhl.ca. Here, it's where you can find all the stats and stuff. I think I ended up kind of cropping some of the schedule out here in this image, but we'll get to it here. Yeah, on Friday there were 5 games, so missing some. The ones that I'm missing, the St. James Junior Canucks won 4-2 over the Charleswood Hawks, and the Twins won 7-3 over the St. Vital Junior Victorias. Pembina Valley, of course, coming away with a 9-2 win. The Riels lost in OT, and the Raiders Junior Hockey Club ended up losing to the Stonewall Jets. And then we went into All-Star Game Day, got the full results for this game at this point, and it was North Division who ended up coming out with the win in that matchup. By a score of 9-6. No Player of the Game award was awarded. So yeah, the All-Stars in the MMJHL from all 10 teams had a chance to go at it. Congratulations, Team North taking down Team South in that All-Star game on Saturday. But then there was one game on Sunday, the Transcon Railer Express beating the Stonewall Jets. Then we fast forward into Monday, the Riels with a big 4-0 win over the Junior Canucks. Doubleheader on Tuesday night, 2 nights ago. Victoria's with a big 8-3 win for Gary with another statement win, a 6-0 shutout victory over the Hawks, and Pembina Valley beating the Raiders Junior Hockey Club by a score of 3-1 last night. Of course, a doubleheader for tonight's action in the MMJHL, and from that game that we just called, the Raiders came into this one heading into a back-to-back, the Vics with a day's rest, and the Raiders got off to a 3-0 lead. The Vics battled their way back, and it was the Raiders who ended up coming away with an OT victory tonight. The OT winners scored by Samuel Senchuk, who ended up getting Player of the Game on G Show Productions as well. Shots were 35-31 in favor of the Raiders Junior Hockey Club in that contest, and a huge win for them in the standings, as well as a huge win that for their sake of things by the St. Boniface Riels, because with St. Boniface's win, the Riels win over the Stonewall Jets tonight. These aren't the updated standings, but heading into tonight, this is what the layout looked like, and for the Raiders, they now move up to 39 points, tying the Hawks in the standings in the point totals. They'll have one more game played than them. once the standings are updated here. But the Stonewall Jets fall back out of a playoff spot after losing tonight to the St. Boniface Riels. They're behind by 2 points now, but with still 2 games in hand. It's going to be a tight playoff race down to the very end. St. Vital was able to come away with a point in tonight's matchup, so they end up staying ahead of St. Boniface in the standings by 1 point, as St. Boniface is now at 43, St. Vital at 44. For the full updates and in terms of scores, if you guys want to see them in depth in terms of how the games went, the schedule, the statistics in full, be sure to check out mmjhl.ca for more information. But before we head to our first transition for this episode, I want to get into that game that we were able to broadcast on Tuesday night. I want to show you some highlights from it in full. The Victorias got off to a 1-0 deficit in that one, would come back scoring 5 unanswered and would end up getting the 8-3 win. There was a special moment in this game as well, so let's throw it to the highlights right now. That is the wrong highlights. 1 second here, folks. Ended up... Let's see here. There we go. So, yeah, as we reframe the screen here, Anthony Jacob ended up getting the scoring started for the Raiders as he stops up that right face-off circle, buries it past Mason Tebec to give the Royal Knights the 1-0 lead. But moments later, it would be Tyler Rubini, who he's been fantastic as the season has gone along. Takes a puck end-to-end, blows by the defense with speed before dangling and tucking it home for the Vics. They would go up 3-1 after the first period, and this special moment would happen next.
They go D-to-D. Machia still out there along with along with Imbrogno. Back to Machia, back to Imbrogno, backhand scores! Alessandro Imbrogno! As the whole bench going crazy. Believe that may be
the Alessandro Imbrogno's first career goal as a St. Vital Junior Victoria to give them a 4-1 lead. They would strike again shortly after, and now into the third period at 5-2. The Royal Knights coming in sniping past number 1 in Mason Tebec to give them a 2-goal deficit only, but the Vics would squash that real quick as Rubini and Nolan Anderson would play give and go with each other. Nolan Anderson finding Rubini backdoor. The Vics would add on 2 more after that goal to make it 8-3 the final for them, sweeping the season series against the River East Royal Knights. And for the St. Vital Junior Victorias, on the opposite side of the season series sweep tonight, as they were officially swept in their season series against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. But myself, Graham, the G Show Forsyth, will be back after a transition here in this abbreviated edition of the MMJHL podcast, brought to you by Goaltenders, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, and Terrico. Coming up next, more updates from around the league here on the show. Welcome back to the MMJHL podcast. No guest for tonight's episode. Was going to do this at the arena, but ended up doing it at home. I've been your host so far, Graham the G Show Forsyth. Hoping everyone's doing well. Late on this Thursday night, next edition of this podcast coming out next Thursday for you guys, where we will have guests in that episode. Just couldn't get anything happening this week, but had a chance to broadcast 2 games this week at the St. Vital Centennial Arena, where the Vics ended up splitting their week of games in a bit of a different layout of the schedule of games than we're used to seeing, due to it being All-Star weekend. The All-Star game ended up happening this past Saturday, where Team North defeated Team South by a score of 9-6. This year's MMJHL All-Star game at 7 Oaks Sportsplex. hosted by the Raiders Junior Hockey Club this season. And for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, this is a squad that at one point in the year ended up thinking that this was for sure a playoff team. But throughout the past month and these past 10 games, things have sure changed. As we take a look at the standings, the Raiders Junior Hockey Club heading into tonight's matchup were tied with the Stonewall Jets in terms of points in the standings. So even though they're back in now, as talked about, they move up to 39 points, tied with Charleswood, and Stonewall moves out of the playoff spot. Stonewall's last 10 games have been way stronger than the Raiders have, but yeah, if the Raiders can start to get it going again, maybe Stonewall falters. Who knows? Let me tell you that the Fort Garry Twins, this is a team that is playing like the best team in the whole league right now. I mean, back-to-back huge wins over the Charleswood Hawks and the St. Vital Junior Victorias, in both where they outshot them. I heard that they ended up changing their systems on the forecheck, and I had a chance to see some footage of it. It was pretty darn smothering. So, yeah, systems changed as the season has gone along. This team has a lot of talent. Merrick DeGrave spoke highly about them, and seems like they're putting it all together right now. St. James Junior Canucks and Pembina Valley Twisters, the only two guaranteed teams right now, I'd say, to make the playoffs. St. Vital, they're at 44 points now, only 1 point up on third place in the standings, and everything really tight in the league at this point. Heading into the final 7 or so games into the season, which is beautiful. You gotta absolutely love that. But in terms of the points leaders, there's been a name that is creeping up. And let me see if he officially got any points tonight. Because if he did, he ended up tying Rylan Hugan in points. And if we can see here, no. Of course, had a chance to call this game. Wasn't sure if he had a chance to, or if he got an assist. He didn't. Rubini went pointless tonight, so he remains in third in the point race. But take a look at it. He's really made strides as the season's gone along to make it near the top, and wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if he does pass Rylan Hugan, given how good of a second half of the season that Tyler Rubini has had. Of course, January's Player of the Month in the mmjhl, but Tyrone Willen remains point leader king here in the mmjhl. In terms of goal leaders, well, Rubini is right behind Rylan Hugan, probably the one with the best chance to catch him at this point, but the goal king so far in the 2023-2024 mmjhl season still ahead by 4 with 38 games played. We'll have to keep checking in on that to see if he holds. And for Brady Whiteley, well, he's still holding on to the assist lead. Him and Derek Weeb only separated by 2. Whiteley with 2 more games played, but still in good position there. Tyrone Willen, of course, right behind Derek Weeb. Gorchinski and Bateman also on this list. And in terms of the wins leaders, well, it's still Noah Gilbert. Logan Enns, though, only 2 behind him at this point. Alex Pauls, Connor Murphy, Jesse Morris on this list, and Evan Benira and Zach Meadows knocking on the door, breaking into the top 5, or I guess in this case, the top 4 in wins in the mmjhl standings. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where these standings really, truly do go, and the results of these teams the rest of the way in the mmjhl. Let me tell you that I don't think that the Victorias will want to be playing the Raiders Junior Hockey Club in a playoff series, simply for the fact that, well, the Raiders won every single game against them this season. If that ends up being a first-round matchup, that is going to be an intense, most likely chippy first round that we'd have the pleasure of calling at the St. Vital Centennial Arena. Trying to see if maybe we can broadcast games in other places come playoff time in the mmjhl, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, in terms of that game we saw tonight, like, Victoria's seem, especially against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, that when they're not on their game, it's they're giving up the middle of the ice and giving up chances there, like we saw tonight against the Raiders. Now, things did end up calming down for the Vics as this game went along. They got more structured, more settled down in their own end, but we saw it late in the game. Some turnovers almost came to cost them, like the one Dayton Keysman had, and once this victorious team did turn the puck over, this Raiders Junior Hockey Club team was fast on the counterattack and made the Vics pay at points for it. But I think a huge thing was, and it's been this kind of the story down the stretch here for this victorious team, is they never really seem like they're out of a game. Down 3-0 against the Charleswood Hawks, for example, a few weeks ago now, and they were able to come back, sparked by Tyler Rubany. Of course, tonight they end up settling down, getting onto their game plan, and end up finding a way to claw back and get a point in OT. This has kind of been the story for the Victorias, especially during the Jeff Mitchell era, even though he's not the head coach anymore, but he's now the GM of this team. With this group of players that was under the Jeff Mitchell regime of him being the head coach last season, it's a team that starts off slow and a team that picks things up as things go along. So, yeah, Saint Fatal, they're comfortable playing in front or from behind. For them, though, they're going to want to clean up the details in their game, of course. You got to get off to better starts come playoff time, because you could be going up against a team that might make you pay for it, right? Say if you make it to the semifinals, for example, and a team like the Pembina Valley Twisters or the St. James Junior Canucks, even in the first round, right? You need to start off better. And when we've seen this VIX team start off better and actually come away with more goals than the other team has in the first period, we've seen good things from them. So, yeah, the bad start, as well as the Raiders Junior Hockey Club doing a really good job of finding the passing lanes and finding the passing teams. They played with a lot of urgency down the stretch in this game and to start things off, and they're in an urgent position, an urgent spot, because they're looking to make the playoffs, and they're in a race to do so. Not comfortable, but could be a blessing in disguise for a team like the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, who, you know, if they do end up making it in, they have a chance to basically continue to play playoff hockey, as they are in playoff mode right now. So, yeah, those are the interesting things about those lower seeds, right? They could continue to ride the momentum if they do get hot to get in. We'll have to wait and see if the Raiders Junior Hockey Club can be that team to continue to stay in the win column and to potentially get hot down the stretch here, heading into the playoffs, to try to get back into the picture. We'll show you once again the schedule to end off this week. We're going to get 3 games, a triple header tomorrow, since 4 teams were in action tonight, and the Raiders, the Vics, the Riels, and the Stonewall Jets. Charleswood, with what is a huge matchup for them in terms of a game where you got to win it to get what should be an easy 2 points over a team who I don't think is going to make it easy for them. They're rivals in the River East Royal Knights. As bad as the Royal Knights are in the standings, don't expect them to be a pushover in this one. Looking to respond after that 8-3 blowout loss they had against St. Fatal. Charleswood looking to do the same. Puck drops at 7:30. The Fort Garry Twins playing against the St. James Junior Canucks. Another test for this Fort Garry Twins team, and another opportunity to prove that are they for real in terms of a dark horse pick to go deep in the playoffs in the mmjhl. All those questions still remain to be answered, but looking to test out that new look forecheck and their new look systems offensively against the St. James Junior Canucks. Puck drops at 7:30 for that one. Pembina Valley welcoming the Transcone Railer Express to Morris in a game that will drop at 8 p.m. And then 5 games on tap for Sunday. Charleswood against Raiders Junior Hockey Club at 2 p.m. St. Vital against Transcona at East End on Sunday afternoon to Stonewall coming into Winnipeg to battle against the St. James Junior Canucks, which is going to be a huge matchup for them, looking to, of course, get back into the playoff picture. Riel's against the Twisters should be a fun one at Southdale at 3 p.m. puck drops. And then the only evening game, the Twins going up against the River East Royal Knights, puck drops at 7:30 p.m. And just to show you one last time the standings heading into the weekend, check out these full standings at mmjhl.ca. Canucks, Twisters, the only teams in a comfortable position heading into what should be an eventful weekend in the mmjhl, with the All-Star game in the mirrors that happened this past Saturday, and with everything pretty much set up at this point in terms of, well, what's next in terms of something exciting. It's the playoffs, and all these teams that are still in contention for it, I'd say 9 at this point, since they're technically pretty much eliminated at this point in the River East Royal Knights. But the 9 teams that are in the race, it's going to be a lot of fun to see who makes it in. Who do you guys think makes the playoffs and misses out of those teams that are in contention of potentially missing? Will the Raiders make it in, or will it be Stonewall, Fort Garry, one of those other teams that ends up holding on to that final spot in the standings? Going to be a lot of fun to check back on this next week to see where the standings are at then on the mmjhl podcast for episode 13. But for now, folks, I'm going to take one last transition here on this edition of the podcast, and going to come back for some final words here on this kind of bizarre edition of the mmjhl podcast here on gshow Productions. Stick with me for more. Well, you made it to the end of this edition of the mmjhl podcast, everybody. I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Thank you to goaltenders as well as Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools and Terrico for sponsoring this edition of the mmjhl podcast. Funny story, as I finished period 2, so I've been taking each and every one of these sponsors and giving them a period to showcase them throughout, right? And I started off with the goaltenders and ended off by finishing showing Terrico in the second period of tonight's matchup. So yeah, kind of funny how that went. A lot going on, and yeah, too bad that we couldn't have more going on this podcast for episode 12. I was looking to get guests on the show, but was unable to. But don't worry, for next week we will have players on episode 13, where we will be discussing the past things that have happened in the league and what's coming up. Getting to tell players' stories in these interviews. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned for that, coming out next week on Thursday night. Earlier than this one on G Show Productions on gshow.ca. mmjhl Game Day. We'll be back for it on February 28th at 8:30 p.m. at St. Vital Centennial Arena. So in a few weeks' time. To cover that game that we did broadcast on the network, but it got postponed due to the Zamboni making a boo-boo in the ice, screwing up the ice and putting a gash in it. So yeah, that should be interesting. St. Vital already down 3-0 in that one, so at a disadvantage. But hey, it seems like they don't mind being down 3-0 and can easily come back for that. And that one, it's going to be all about the start for St. Vital. We can't wait to call it coming up on the 28th to see how that game finishes off. But yeah, Winnipeg Jets blog article is posted now on Sports in the Prairies on our blog section on gshow.ca. So be sure to check that out if you're a fan of the Winnipeg Jets. Going to be putting out a weekly review and weekend preview of the mmjhl tomorrow on Sports in the Prairies on gshow.ca. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, like I said here, if you did enjoy this episode, so you don't miss any future uploads of this podcast, which is coming out next week on Thursday night here on the network. Yeah, I mean, I was only here for a short amount of time tonight, folks, but I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Going to rest my voice now, since I've been talking for about, well, well over 2.5 hours at this point. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the MMJHL podcast. And oh, by the way, if you're into some female hockey, got a female hockey game coming up and playoff predictions for that league, the MFHL U18 AAA Hockey League. So yeah, lots of great content coming out. Also, the Potman Hockey Academy podcast tomorrow too. Thank you to goaltenders Terrico and McKen Fasteners and Tools for sponsoring another edition of the show. I've been your host Graham, the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and saying so long, everybody. And oh, by the way, if you want to catch some great hockey that's been on the network already this week, Royal Knights and Raiders games versus the Vicks fully out now. But yeah, that's all I gotta say, truly, folks. Have a wonderful rest of your night, a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there, and yeah, see you next Thursday, everybody. Take care.